Good morning, everyone, and happy Monday. My name is Nick Marro with Occupy Fantasy. You could find me on Twitter at Nick Marro DFS. If you haven't already, please like the video. Also, subscribe to the channel. That helps us get more free content like this out to you on a regular basis. As always, I'm here to help you break down tonight's NBA DFS main slates on both DraftKings and FanDuel. I'm going to talk through our model here from the Occupy Fantasy website. I got a FanDuel window open, a DraftKings window open. I'll talk through my favorite plays as we go through team by team and slowly start to build on each site. If you haven't already, check the links in the description below. Become a member of Occupy Fantasy today. You get access to the model you see here, a single lineup builder, a multi-lineup builder. We also have a private Discord server full of seasoned DFS pros to help you improve your game. There is a 30-minute window leading up to each slate's lock where you can ask your lineup and slate specific questions as well. So without further ado, let's get into tonight's slate. 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time start time, pretty standard there. But yeah, only 4 games on this Monday, which is a bit small of a slate. So obviously, we're going to have some condensed ownership. There are some good pay up options, not a ton of value. I'm liking a lot this early in the day. But yeah, I think we can find some as we dig through these games. Again, 4 games, no teams on back to backs, I don't think. So we have all of the injury reports, which is certainly helpful. So let's get into it. First game on the slate here, we have the Heat at the 76ers. The 76ers, 6-point favorites at home, just a 217-point game total here. So let's take a look. Um, yeah, so we got Miami. Tyler Hero is questionable. Nikola Jovic is out. Kevin Love is probable. Kyle Lowry is questionable. And Omer Yurtseven is listed as out. So I don't think Lowry's going to be back tonight. He's still listed as questionable. If he is, that would cut into someone like Gabe Vincent, who has been a decent value play. Obviously, we're not seeing much ownership going to anyone on Miami right now. That's not really surprising. I think this game is the lowest total of the 4 on the slate. Obviously, this matchup with Philly is a tough one. So just not a ton of upside there. But with Hero questionable, if Hero ends up out, that's going to be a big boost to both Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo. So we got to keep an eye on that news. If Hero's in, I don't think any of these 3 are going to be priorities, but we see them all under 10% owned. So there would be some viability there. Kevin Love's been starting and hitting value at a lower price tag than we're seeing him at today at 5,400, 5,600 over on FanDuel. A little bit overpriced now, but if we have Lowry and Hero out, I think he could see enough usage to hit value at that tag. But if they're healthy and Heroes in, I don't know that I'm getting to Kevin Love now that he's pushing 6K. But yeah, if we get no one ruled out, it's really tough to get excited about any of these Miami Heat players. If I have to pick one, I guess I would go with Bam over on DK where he's just 8,600. Probably Hero on both sides though, where he's sub 8K. Just yeah, I don't know. It's tough to stomach Jimmy Butler pushing 10K over on FanDuel. And he's been pretty inconsistent. So even 88 on DK doesn't feel great. All the starters are going to be viable. None are really priorities, though. If Kyle Lowry's out again, I could see going to Gabe Vincent as a value play, but no priorities here. Just 217-point game total against Philly. Nothing all that appealing. We can flip over to the Philly side now. Mac McClung's back down with the G League. Dwayne Dedman's out, so no real injury news here. Joel Embiid, obviously one of the top rob point plays on the slate, even in a tough matchup against Miami. He has a massive, massive ceiling. James Harden, expensive, 9,800 on DK, 10K over on FanDuel, but we know what type of upside he's capable of as well. Excuse me. So these are both really solid options. But again, it's one of the lower totaled games on the slate. It's tough for me to call anything a priority here, but given the small nature of the slate, I will say Embiid is one of my favorite pay ups. Usually we have a ton of great guards to pay up for. We don't necessarily have that today, so I could see maybe getting to Harden. But there's really no play from this game I'm calling a top priority. We're about to talk through a couple other games where there's other kind of mid to high range pay up options that I'm liking a little bit more than Embiid, just given the matchup with Miami. But that being said, I wouldn't talk anyone out of playing Embiid here. He is one of the top run point plays on the board. So let's move into the next game on the slate now. We have the Pistons at the Hornets. The Hornets are 6.5-point favorites at home. We have a nice 234.5-point game total here. Let's start on the Charlotte side of things. Kelly Oubre's back. He's no longer on the injury report. PJ Washington is listed as doubtful. Theo Maledon's out. Cody Martin's out. And James Bouknight's back down with the G League. So not a ton of injury news to really sift through here. With PJ Washington likely out, we could see JT Thor slide back into the starting lineup. As I described on the last video I was on, even if Thor starts, you probably don't want to play him. He's not really someone I'm interested in here. LaMelo Ball's been outstanding, though. 10-3 on both sites. I like him a lot. I think the matchup with Detroit certainly boosts his ceiling, even with Rozier, Oubre, Hayward all healthy. LaMelo Ball's certainly been the focal point of this offense. I like him a lot on both sides. Gordon Hayward, 6K flat over on DK, 6,200 over on FanDuel, especially on FanDuel where we're really lacking forward options. I do like Hayward over there. I'd go ahead and pencil him in. You can play him at shooting guard or small forward. I prefer him at small forward just because there are better shooting guard options than there are on the wing there. So Hayward's someone I'm certainly considering. I could see even penciling LaMelo Ball right now on both sides. The thing of it is, obviously, these are two of the worst teams on the slate in terms of basketball and like quality play. They're both kind of tanking right now, but at the same time, they're not playing much defense, very high total. And while I wish the rotations were a bit more condensed, it's not really the same situation we're seeing with teams like OKC, where they're just playing a ton of guys for like 28 minutes a night. Their starters are still getting good runs. So I do like LaMelo here. I do like Hayward here. With Washington out, they're both going to see a little bit of extra usage. Mark Williams at center, he's pretty boomer bust. I played him 2 nights ago. He was terrible. Didn't play him the last slate he was on, and he went off. So he's one of those guys. I mean, kind of like a Joval, kind of like a Zubac before Plumlee got traded to the Clippers. He has a very high ceiling, but a pretty low floor. But that is valuable on a 4-game slate, so I could get to some Mark Williams. In lineups where you're not getting to LaMelo, I think it makes sense to go to Rozier. You're kind of getting double leverage on the field. If LaMelo Ball fails, it's very likely that we see Terry Rozier having a strong game. So in your lineups without LaMelo, maybe get some Terry in your lives. Kelly Oubre, a little bit expensive for me. He is starting to see regular minutes, but like I mentioned, I'd rather go to Gordon Hayward. But there is a lot to like here for Charlotte. I don't think anyone should be ignored in that starting lineup. And if you're desperate for value, you could even get to someone like Nick Richards coming off the bench, Dennis Smith Jr. coming off the bench. Wouldn't call either priorities, but if you're playing 150 lineups on a 4-game slate, those are the types of guys you'll probably get 5 to 10% owned. And yeah, I don't think it's insane. So for me, LaMelo's the priority here. Obviously, I like Gordon Hayward a lot on both sites. And then Mark Williams is fine as kind of a boom bust center play, but it's tough to call him a priority just given his volatility in general. So over on the Detroit side of things, Bojan Bogdanovic is actually questionable tonight. No Jalen Duren, no Jaden Ivey. Nerlens Noel is out. Kate Cunningham's obviously still out. Isaiah Stewart is questionable. So I think we're going to get some value here. James Wiseman did finally get the start at center last time out. Over on DK, where you could play 2 centers, I think he's kind of a no-brainer value option. Just going to click his game log quickly. Take a quick zoom in. Only 23 fantasy points, but he only played 20 minutes. I think we could see more run here. Especially if Stewart ends up out. We already have Duren out, so there's really no reason not to like Wiseman over on DK. The only reason not to like him on FanDuel is because he takes up that center spot, but as things stand, I do think he's one of your better point per dollar center plays. I am hoping we see him kind of push 30 minutes moving forward. They did announce when they traded for him, they wanted him to be the starter. I think that's a little bit crazy, but with Duren out, his minutes should be pretty secure here. Again, excellent game environment. Tough not to like some Wiseman. Killian Hayes, as long as he starts, we have seen Alec Burks get the start at point guard on occasion. But with Jaden Ivey out, I think Hayes' minutes should be secure here. He should see a boost in usage as well. I wouldn't be shocked to see these two guys starting alongside each other, so keep an eye on that. But as things stand, I will call Hayes the priority play. But again, if Burke starts over him, be sure to make that pivot. I'm going to go ahead and pencil him in on both sites. Just way too cheap on DK at 4,600. I'm just going to pull up his game log quickly here. I mean, he's been a little bit inconsistent, but with Ivy and Duren out, he's going to see more usage. As long as he's starting, I think he's kind of a no-brainer, at least in your cash games. Boyan, as I mentioned, is questionable. If he's in, I do think he's viable. Marvin Bagley, wouldn't be shocked to see him start at power forward if Isaiah Stewart ends up ruled out and Boyan Bogdanovic is ruled out. But at the same time, I'm not rushing to get to him. He's been pretty inconsistent all season. Wouldn't be shocked to see Hamidou Diallo slide into the starting lineup alongside Killian Hayes again with Jaden Ivey out of the lineup. But as things stand, I don't know. It's just tough for me to click Diallo on FanDuel where he's 5,100. On DK where he's 3,600 though, That is a very appealing price tag. So keep an eye on that starting lineup for Detroit. This is one of those games that locks at the start of the slate. So we should have that starting lineup. If Hamidou Diallo ends up starting, I think you're going to want to get to him over on DraftKings. Same with Alec Burks, though. It's going to be one of those two likely starting at the two alongside Killian Hayes. So the priorities now are Killian Hayes, James Wiseman. And then if Isaiah Stewart's out, I'll like Wiseman even more. If Hamidou Diallo starts, he's going to become a priority. And I think no one's going to click Bojan because he's going to be questionable all day. If he's suddenly ruled in, he becomes a very solid option at either forward position. So just a lot to like here for Detroit. But yeah, keep it on the starting lineup. Things could change. This is a team that's tanking. They're willing to shake things up on a night-to-night basis. But once again, Hayes and Wiseman are priorities for me as things stand. All right, so now we can move into the 7:30 window here. We got a good game between the Celtics at the Knicks. The Knicks are 2-point underdogs at home. 223-point game total here. Let's start on the Boston side of things. The big news here is Jaylen Brown's going to be out with for personal reasons. Derek White's listed as probable. Danilo Gallinari obviously out for the season. That's really all the news we need to talk about. But the big piece here is with Jaylen Brown out. That should be enough extra usage for Tatum to make him one of the better pay-ups on the board. At 10-2 over on DK, I like him a lot. I know I already talked about Embiid. Embiid may have technically the higher ceiling in terms of raw points, but in a much tougher matchup, I am more comfortable going to Tatum here with Jaylen Brown out of the lineup. You're getting almost a 1K discount. So I love Tatum over on DraftKings. On FanDuel, he's a little bit tougher to get to, pushing 11K or right at 11K. But yeah, I think you can fit him pretty comfortably and also play someone like LaMelo Ball if you're paying down at center. If you go to Embiid and you want Tatum, you probably can't pay up for LaMelo. So you're kind of picking two of the three studs there. But yeah, they all look really strong to me. If you can get Tatum in your lineups, I certainly think it's viable. Marcus Smart, Derek White, Malcolm Brogdon should all see increased usage. Derek White's been shooting the lights out. I like him a lot on both sides. He is expensive, though. I definitely prefer him over on DK, where he's only 5,500. I think that's a little bit too cheap. He is questionable on the DraftKings site, but he is listed as probable over on the FanDuel site, or excuse me, on the actual official NBA injury report. So I think White should be good to go here. We got Robert Williams. He's fine, kind of a boom bust center play, similar to who was it I was talking about earlier? Mark Williams. I think both Williams have upside, but they both have low floors. I think Mark's a little bit safer just given the game environment. But yeah, the priority here is Tatum. Smart, White both look really solid as well. Those are kind of the two secondary plays I'd be considering. We see a lot of ownership going to White on DK. That's no surprise as he's only 5,500. So not the best matchup with the Knicks in New York, but obviously with Jaylen Brown out, we are going to see increased usage for the rest of those starters, namely a Jason Tatum, who I do consider to be a core play. All right, over on the Knicks side of things now, no major injury news. Daquan Jeffrey's out. He's with the G League team, so we really don't need to get into that one. Jalen Brunson, he is a little bit too cheap knowing his upside. 8,400 on FanDuel, 8,500 over on DK. He's probably my favorite Nick play here. Julius Randle looks solid. I mean, 9,300 DK, 9,500 on FanDuel. Reasonable price. Not really a priority for me against a tough Boston front court defense, but he's going to have appeal on a 4-game slate at reasonable ownership. RJ Barrett's fine. Mitchell Robinson, there's centers I prefer to him, but he is in play for playing a ton of lineups. Someone who helped me out the other night was Emmanuel quickly coming off the bench. If he gets hot, he could still hit around 30 fantasy points, which is valuable at that 5K flat price on DK, 5,900 over on FanDuel. Wouldn't call him a priority, but he is getting the minutes even coming off the bench. Josh Hart looks fine here. Wouldn't get to much Quentin Grimes. I think his minutes are going to continue to drop as they kind of tighten up this rotation, and Josh Hart gets the minutes he needs coming out of that trade deadline. So the priorities here for me, not calling anything a true core play, but I do like Jalen Brunson best as far as Knicks go. I mean, if you could fit Julius Randle, go ahead. I'd rather get to Tatum if possible at that power forward position, but Randle certainly has some upside as well at a decent discount. So um, decent game environment. Tough to really force or prioritize anything there for the Knicks, but it is tough to not like Jason Tatum here with Jaylen Brown out. So moving into the final game on the slate now, we have the Magic at the Pelicans. 226.5 point game total here. The Pelicans are 4-point favorites at home. We can start with them. We get the Larry Nance Jr. is out. Zion Williamson is still out. So what that does is secures minutes for one Jonas Valanciunas. Valanciunas is pretty inconsistent when Nance is in the lineup, but with Nance out of the lineup, his minutes should be secure. Let's see here. I know I penciled in Wiseman over on FanDuel, but Valanciunas is a good enough upside play to maybe take me off him here. Um, I don't know. We got to wait and see. If we get Stewart out for Detroit, I probably would still stick with Wiseman. They're not going to have any other centers. Um, but if Stewart's in and he's going to cut into the upside of Wiseman, maybe we go to Joval. Again, with Larry Nance out of the lineup, his minutes are going to be a bit more secure. You could play two centers over on DK, so you could play Wiseman and Joval if you're not getting to Embiid. Obviously, I like Embiid on any slate. He has massive upside. But at the same time, yeah, that pairing of Joval Wiseman makes it really easy to fit whatever else you want at the other positions. So I do like him a lot here. Brandon Ingram, he's finally above 8K on both sites. I do like him a lot. Small forward only now on both sites, but he's been excellent. Uh, really strong play. I like him everywhere. CJ McCollum looks good here as well. Definitely more inconsistent than Ingram. Similar upside though at lower ownership. As long as Zion's out, both of those two are going to look excellent. Then Josh Richardson, he's been starting. I think he's fine here. He's just priced up on both sites now. 5,400 on DK, 6,200 on FanDuel. He's viable. He's in play, but not something I'd ever be rushing to get to. With Nance out, there is a chance we see more minutes for someone like Willie Hernan Gomez. I don't think that you can necessarily count on that. But at the same time, if you're playing a bunch of lineups, really looking to get different on a 4-game slate, there is some merit to kind of going to someone like him. But for me, it's Ingram here is the priority. I do really like Jovel. I think with Nance being out, his minutes should be a bit more secure than usual. And then McCollum's fine. Don't mind Richardson, and yeah, some of these secondary wing plays are okay as well, but really nothing I'd be prioritizing. Moving over to the Orlando side of things. A lot of mouths to feed over here in Orlando. Jonathan Isaac's out, resting that hamstring. Caleb Houston's out. Kevon Harris is back down with the G League. So Paulo Banchero looks good on both sides. I mean, he's priced reasonably, just over 7K. Kind of the focal point of the offense on most nights, but at the same time, we have guys like Fultz, Carter, Wagner cutting into that usage rate. Jalen Suggs now is getting healthy. He's seeing more minutes. So they just have a ton of good options here offensively and for fantasy. So it's tough to know on each night who's going to go off. But for me, I do like Banchero. I think Fultz is fine on both sites. Better on DK. FanDuel, I got him up to 7K now. That's tough for me to stomach. But yeah, I think the Magic are fine here. It's really tough for me to call anything a priority except for maybe Banchero. You get small forward or power forward eligibility for him on both sites. It is a thinner position. But if you can find a little bit of extra for Ingram, I would rather go to Brandon Ingram over a Banchero. But if you can't, yeah, he's certainly in play. Good matchup here against New Orleans. So let's take a look at what we built so far. I mean, I had Joval here at center. I think right now I'm leaning Wiseman, and that's under the assumption that Isaiah Stewart's going to be out. I just like what that opens up for us at the other positions. I could go ahead and add someone like Ingram. Where is he? You can even get Banchero as well if you wanted. Actually, no, you couldn't. You're left with around 4,700 per person. But look at all the payups we have here. We got Tatum, we got Ingram, we got Lamelo, and then we're gonna have to find some value at the other guard spots, which is possible. We talked about Josh Richardson. I think he's fine. Manuel quickly in large field tournaments. If Kyle Lowry's out, we could go to someone like Gabe Vincent. Diallo, if he starts, going to be good value. So we should get some guard value. And like I said before, if you can't pay for Ingram, you need a little bit of extra salary. You could go down to someone like Paulo Banchero or even Franz Wagner if you need a little bit of extra salary. So enough decent mid-range options to probably fit two pay-ups in your lineup over on FanDuel. DK, it's going to be a little bit tougher, but you have those two center spots, so you can kind of lock in Wiseman near min price, get to Tatum, get to Ball, and still have around 5K left per person. So pretty solid slate overall. Just going to take a quick look at the model without sorting by team. Ownership as things stand, Wiseman, super chalky, over on DK, followed by Ball, Hayes, Tatum, White. Wow, those are the guys I put in my initial build, so that feels good to see. The field's with me, but that means with the other spots, you're going to want to look for guys that are lower owned if you're playing large field tournaments. This is kind of a cash build as things stand. Very chalky, but on a small slate, you can start with some chalk like this. Just make sure your other three guys are kind of under that 10% threshold if you're playing larger field tournaments. Then looking at FanDuel ownership, Killian Hayes, Hayward Ball. I see Bagley drawing a lot of ownership. He does have power forward eligibility, so you could go ahead and probably pair him with Wiseman to feel okay about it. I do think those two could cut into each other's upside, but in a game with such a massive total, wouldn't shock me if they shared the floor a decent amount. Wouldn't shock me if they started alongside each other. And yeah, I think a lot of game log watchers are building lineups this morning because we see Bagley going over 40 fantasy points. If he's going to be anything near that, he is going to be a smash play. So yeah, I like Bagley on both sides. But if he's not starting and Wiseman is, I still think Wiseman's the safer play, especially on DraftKings where he's over 1K cheaper. So no surprises there. Really solid slate overall. Sorting by OF index, which is upside. We got Ball, Embiid, Tatum, Harden, Ingram. Surprises there really either. So once again, my name's Nick Marro. You can find me on Twitter at Nick Marro DFS. If you haven't already, please like the video. Also subscribe to the channel. That helps us get more free content like this out to you on a daily basis. And again, check the links in the description below. Become a member of Occupy Fantasy today. Let's have some fun tonight, everyone, and make some money. Take care and good luck.